this is kind of a session that's based on kind of an example I already gave before. So I was at DRAPAC 25 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, in September, and I was invited to kind of pitch and put forward this kind of workshop to this kind of conference here as well. So I've kind of adapted it slightly to kind of fit with the theme. So we'll see kind of how the theme works and how the kind of the experimentation kind of works with this. But really what it is kind of tracing platform power. I have some zines actually in here, which I actually, I'm not too sure how many people are in here. I only have 40 copies of these. Yeah, I might have them out. So I actually have some zines, and these are actually something I'll be giving out. I think there might be more than 40. I'm not too sure how many people in here, so there might be some shared kind of copies with people in here, but I'll figure that out when it kind of comes to it. But this is kind of an activity that's kind of interactive. I'll be giving you one of these, and you'll walk around and use the prompts in this kind of zine to kind of collect data, and then we come back to this room to kind of discuss kind of like what we find as we kind of walk around the space. So really over the next 45 minutes, we're going to explore this building in a different way, not just as a space that we're gathered in, for this conference, but for an environment that's increasingly mediated by digital platforms that shape how we access facilities, move between floors, and interact with services. So today, I'm just going to spend the first few minutes kind of framing, introducing the task. So I'll have a time for kind of questions if the task is kind of confusing or you're not sure what needs to be done. Then we'll walk around kind of in small groups. So it's not like a walking tour. I'm not going to walk you around and speak as we kind of go around. It's a bit more kind of unstructured in the sense that I will walk around generally in the space, but you're kind of free to kind of move around for like 25 minutes to kind of respond to the prompts in the zine, and then we come back to discuss it. And then we'll kind of like share our notes kind of from this kind of field guide or field notes, as I kind of call it. So I have no slides. It's all kind of based around kind of the discussion in here. So for me as well, like this is my first time in India, my first time in Hyderabad, my first time in this building. So for me as well, I'm going to be doing this walk and finding things out about this kind of building, finding things out about kind of this space. And so what I'm trying to do with this kind of activity is thinking about how platforms mediate access to services and spaces in this kind of building. And as we walk through the T-Hub, I think the plan will be to go up to floor 6 and then sort of back down again. That's kind of the easiest, I think, in the time limit. We'll think about kind of QR codes, payment terminals, kind of app-required services, kind of access controls, and think about kind of really when these systems fail as well, or when someone doesn't have the right app, account, or connectivity. So I really want to think about who bears responsibility when platform-mediated services fail or exclude. So in other words, when something goes wrong, who is accountable? When someone can't access a service or space, whose problem is it? And where does power lie in these platform relationships? So what we're doing is an activity called data walking. So this is a method, it's not invented by me, it's kind of adapted from other kind of methods as well. And technically the idea of walking and learning goes back to like ancient Greece. I think Plato used to do walking lectures, so it's not kind of a new method in a way. But I'm borrowing this method from researchers like Alison Powell and David Hunter that use walking as an embodied, situated practice to critically examine how digital infrastructures shape urban life. So for this workshop, I'm adapting the method to focus on platform governance. So we'll see how well that kind of works. It's a bit experimental. It could fail in itself, this kind of activity, but it'd be interesting to see kind of how it resonates, how it relates to people, how people relate to the activity. So we're thinking from convenience to dependency. So instead of just noticing where platforms make things easier, we're interested in where they become necessary and what happens when you can't or won't use them. So this is really from individual experience to accountability gaps. We're not just documenting our personal interactions with platforms, but examining who profits, who's excluded, who takes responsibility when things fail. So data walking helps us understand platforms not as abstract apps or services, but as physical infrastructure embedded in built environments that shape who can access what and on whose terms. So moving now to the walking activity, so we can quickly get kind of started with this activity. You can walk around in small groups, so I don't mind because some of you will be here with friends, some of you will be here with kind of people as well, so you can share a couple of zines in the group. I might borrow you to kind of hand them out actually in there. So you'll just need a pen or something like that just to kind of make notes in here. I'm going to keep hold of one copy for the time being just so I can read through it. So what you're kind of doing is just walking around. You can kind of follow me. I'll vaguely kind of walk through the space. I will time it just so that we're not too over into lunch as well. So we may start kind of in a few minutes and we'll meet back. So it's 12:15. For around 12:35 maybe, we'll try and be back here so that we don't go over too far into lunchtime. So really you're looking out for kind of QR codes, payment terminals, app required, access points, digital check-in screens, turnstiles, Wi-Fi networks. I think all of us did that this morning when we kind of tried to use the T-Hub kind of Wi-Fi. So notice where platforms mediate services or spaces. Think about access and exclusions. Think about what happens if you don't have the right app, payment method, visitor pass, or account. Think about dependencies. So notice where you have choices versus where platform kind of use feels compulsory. Wi-Fi access would fit into that. We had no choice but to give all of our details to access Wi-Fi today. So where does convenience become necessity? How does the building infrastructure as well kind of assume certain technologies? So using your own experience, just pay attention to the moments where you need specific technologies or see specific technologies when moving around. So use this scene to kind of record your ideas. So you can sketch, you can note. Each page kind of has a prompt on it. So like in terms of the first page, it has like thresholds and transitions. There's questions on each page that might prompt you to kind of think about this. There's dependencies. There's dead zones, gaps, resistance and refusal, digital touch points and invisible infrastructures. And then at the end, we're thinking, the reflection page on the last one in terms of before and after kind of undertaking this activity. You may not have kind of notes or anything for every single one of these prompts, and you might not have time to obviously go through all of these. So what we really want to do is when we come back is that we'll try and go through each of these prompts, try and surface some kind of things that you kind of find. I might just go through each page one by one, but also I might just want you to raise anything that you found by doing this walk. So we will start now, unless there's any kind of questions. Is there any questions on the activity? Are we all good? Yeah. Are we all good? Sorry? So we're going to go outside, yeah. So if everybody's happy kind of going, we'll probably avoid using the lifts because I saw the queues kind of earlier, and if we're trying to move a big group like this, so. But come back, yeah. So I think everybody needs to come back to the room for 35, so 12:35.
Yeah, so when I entered the T-Hub, so I saw terminals and saw a lot of security personnel. And there, I think, because you have asked, did something shift? So something shifted for me there. And I thought that I crossed a border.
This would be the thing that would be beneficial, I think, from starting our walk, on the ground floor. I did the same. So this is only the second time I've done this kind of activity. The first time was in Kuala Lumpur. And the building we had was smaller, so it was easier to kind of get between the floors as well. So we were able to kind of use the ground floor and kind of go up. So we were able to kind of see the security points. So they have security guards, security points, and we were able to kind of see that kind of threshold, that kind of transition. We were able to see those kind of barriers that kind of prevent people coming in or not. And I think you're right. Like, so in terms of this activity as well, you can think back to before coming this morning as well. And when I'm thinking of kind of like, platform kind of power, like, the question I would actually ask people here as well is like, how did you get here this morning? Like, how many people used Uber or, public transportation or used, something that required kind of an app or, something to get here? How many people use Uber actually here? A few people. Yeah. So like you're kind of using kind of these kind of platforms to kind of come here as well. And if you're thinking about how we kind of came to this kind of conference today, you're given a QR code, I think, for registration. So that's attached to the data that you use to kind of register here. That data's been collected here. That was scanned. We now all have, these kind of name tags on as well, which also have QR codes on, but that's just for the food, I think. But we're all, identified, in here. There's a security camera in the corner as well. I think they're all around the building. I think every space would be covered, by a camera as well. So we're always kind of, wherever I think we're moving as well, we're always monitored in some way. I think I only have like 5 minutes, so I will kind of, if there's any more, kind of building either on that or kind of responding to one of the other kind of prompts from this. So like, I think as people are asking me about this, this is kind of maybe a weird activity, not kind of a normal kind of method for kind of exploring spaces and exploring these kind of questions. But the intention is to, to respond to these questions kind of as you're walking. So as you're walking through the space, you're kind of looking through and thinking about the questions as you're kind of looking around, which, what you're doing there. And it's kind of a way to kind of make you kind of question it, because I think if you don't do this activity, you probably don't notice the camera, you probably don't think about the security, you don't think about the data you're kind of giving over. And I'll not talk too much because I want to kind of learn from you as well. So if anybody else has a response to any of these kind of prompts.
I was saying, I understood the activity. I thought it was very creative way to understand platforms. For me, the most interesting section was invisible infrastructures. And therein, I thought that the emergency and the staff exits were these mysterious parts of the infrastructure that I did not know anything about, and where some kind of value is moving, but which I cannot then see. I also saw people outside that there are no boundaries, or in the sense that people sit in the open and there's no boundary between public and private space, or it's all of a semi-public or a semi-private space wherein people are also having a conversation or moving around in the same space. I'm very interested to know how I can now think of digital infrastructure, in a parallel way. So, if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah, but like, I think touching on what you say there in terms of like when we're in the building, there's this kind of mixture of like public, private kind of space where I think if you go to floor 6 as well, so if anybody went to any of the workshops upstairs, they were kind of like through a co-working space. So you're kind of walking almost through somebody's kind of working space to get to those two rooms as well, which I found kind of interesting because you have that thing where you can look at their screens, and if they're working like there's no privacy. If they're working on confidential material, you can easily look at their screens to see, what they're working on as well. But this building kind of has that mixture, maybe some element of trust in that sense, where it is kind of relatively semi-open, but only if you can get into the building in the first place. There's still that first barrier to kind of get in. Like it's still slightly exclusive in the way that you kind of get in. We're only allowed in because we have these on. Otherwise, we probably, wouldn't be allowed in the building unless we had an appointment or some other kind of form of ID that allows us into the building. I think like for building on this, like my plan, I think, because this is maybe a workshop that requires like 3 hours or 4 hours maybe in total to kind of really surface and give people time to answer the questions and then to kind of build a response to it, is to do some form of like a collaborative kind of mapping exercise. So kind of having a map of the space and sort of like drawing of the space and start to kind of write into, like deep mapping, if anybody comes, from sociology or from geography or critical geography, where you start to build in qualitative data into kind of like a map. So that would be, I think, what I'd want to do. So like in terms of this activity, this is the second time I've done it. Both times have been quite short, 45-minute kind of activities. It probably requires 3 hours to kind of do the walk, reflect on the walk and collect the information, and then work collaboratively to kind of map out kind of the findings and understand and surface kind of what this means. I think we probably have time maybe for one more kind of contribution from anybody in the room before we break for lunch. And after this session, please do come and speak to me about this. It might be, I don't know what kind of the culture is necessarily in India. In Indonesia, where I kind of teach, students can be a bit shy about asking questions. I don't know if in India it's the same, a little bit of shyness in terms of it's the same. So please speak to me one-to-one afterwards. I think if you want to kind of talk more about it, I'm happy to do that as well.
So in one of the questions that you asked is, where did you have no choice in how to do something? So I didn't, so this is what I'm sharing my experiences not related to the walk. So we have to accept terms and conditions of an app if we want to use an app, right? So there we don't have a choice. So if you want to access the app, if you want to use the services of the app, then we have to accept the terms and conditions of the app. Okay, and then you asked what non-digital options still exists. I think talking spaces are non-digital spaces where people can do anything. They can sit, talk, work, or be creative. So those are the non-digital spaces. And finally, you asked what data or value might be moving that you can't see. I think my location by my Google surveilling my location. So that's something which I can't see. Thank you.
Last point is actually one question I was going to ask as well of the group. So I have a Google Pixel phone. I don't know if Pixel are kind of in India as well. But it has an app on here called Fit, which just records as I move around. And if I look at it now, it probably tells me how many steps I've just done on that walk. Apparently I've done 4,000 steps today, so that's just in, I guess, whilst I've been at the T-Hub today. But that passively, collects that data about me. It's kind of just automatically going to set on. I guess I could turn it off, but I also find it kind of useful to make sure I'm moving enough. In India, I don't know if it's the same as for me in Indonesia, but Indonesia, it's difficult to walk in terms of the infrastructure as well. Like, it's very difficult to kind of move around, and so I like to make sure that I'm kind of tracking myself to make sure I am actually moving. And so, like, I think all of you would think about this as well. Like, when you're moving around, even though there are technically, like, outside when you're sitting at the table, it's a non-digital space, you still have your phone. Your phone is still maybe collecting data on you as you're kind of using it, and probably when you're sitting with friends, you're probably browsing your phone as well. You're probably doing things with your phone. And this was a point that kind of came up in the last activity I did when we talked about kind of where you're not seen, what spaces can you be where you're not surveilled, where you're not kind of monitored. And one suggestion was the bathroom, because if you shouldn't have cameras in the bathroom, there shouldn't be any kind of surveillance in the bathroom. But most people, when they sit on the toilet, play on their phone. So you're still, you're still not free from any kind of form of data collection and surveillance, because you don't leave your phone outside the bathroom. You're taking it in with you. So there isn't really any of these non-digital spots. And also in terms of like digital payments, I notice you have the QR codes here as well, which we have in Indonesia as well. But I don't think I can use your QR payments here. I want to try it at some point because it would be easier for me to kind of pay with that. But I think I have to kind of finish now because it is 10 to, and I think we need to let people go for lunch. So I think so thank you for trying this. It's probably a weird or challenging kind of activity. But I think hopefully it kind of provokes something in you to kind of think about the spaces as you walk around. Please, actually, if I can take a photo, if anybody has filled in their zines, can you come to me and I can take some pictures just for my own, collection to kind of see how it kind of is. And feel free to speak to me individually if you have any questions around this method or the purpose of this task or any other kind of general questions. I'm here and I can relax after this because I've got no more activities I need to do. So yeah, thank you everyone. And yeah, please enjoy.